Graeme, and Jeremy. Come aboard. Let's get weird right now on the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back to another live edition of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAPs and UFOs. My name's Luis Jimenez. Thank you so much for being here. I want to say hello to everyone in the chat. We got 10 people in here so far. Everyone, get funky in the comment section. Say hello, and we'll definitely shout you out. We got two really wonderful guests, but before we get to them, I would just want to give you guys some updates. So first things first, the big phone home, ring that bell, like the channel, subscribe. That way you don't miss out on anything. When it comes to the big phone home, we're going to be doing it this Saturday, April 24th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So don't miss out. We've got an insane lineup of guests coming. We talked about Lou Elizondo, Jeremy Corbell, Sager and Jetty just retweeted us. He won't be there, but he's behind what we're doing. So we got a lot of wonderful support. A lot of people. It's starting to pick up steam, you guys. It's starting to pick up steam. And we just had another guest pop in. So we've got 3 guests for you guys today. So this is going to be a lot of fun. This is going to be a really interesting discussion. Graeme Rendall wrote 2 articles. He's also got some special news on a new team that he just joined. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I'm trying to think, what else I got? I can't think of anything, but as soon as I'm done here, I'm going to immediately go to Twitter and I'm going to start tweeting at Senate subcommittees. So if you guys want to help me retweet and tweet at those folks, you're more than welcome to join me after this. I'm going to be doing as much as I can. To be honest, the phone calls, the emails, the answering of questions is starting to become overwhelming. So I really need your help contacting our local and state representatives now. I want them to give them the heads up. I want to start inviting them to join us on the big phone home. If they want to stop by and have a 5-minute discussion, they can do that. But there's no way we're ever going to get those kinds of people unless we start tweeting and hashtagging and reaching out to these folks. You know, I didn't think we were going to get a Sager and Jetty, and we got them to not only talk about the big phone home, interact, ask questions, but he tweeted out the website. You know, he's talking about it. We're on the radar. So guys, get excited because things are happening and I don't want you to miss out on a second of it. So ring the bell. Michael Mataluni and I will be hosting the entire day. It's going to be a blast. So without further ado, let's bring on 3 gentlemen. All 3 will be here on the 24th. All 3 are insanely smart dudes with amazing perspectives. Let's just go ahead and bring them all out at once. Let's do it. So we got Graeme Rendall, author, writer, journalist. We've got Jeremy McGowan, former military, Osiris Project entrepreneur, which, by the way, my dad is so damn curious about that. And then, of course, we've got the legendary Jazz Shaw, another author and journalist as well. So, gentlemen, welcome. How are we doing today?
Doing well.
Doing well. All right. Well, Graeme, let's start with you because that's originally why we started this collection. So, Graeme, tell us what are we talking about today?
So, UAP Media UK, which I've just been sort of invited to join.
By the way, congratulations. If you guys don't know, UAP Media UK is a really awesome division of guys that are doing a lot of wonderful work on the UAP transparency front. If you've seen the hashtag End UAP Secrecy, if you've seen the, that UFO podcast, if you've seen the Signal who does all the patches and stuff here, these are all the same guys. They're all doing amazing work. Dave Partridge heads up the Shadows of Your Mind magazine portion of it. So Graeme, you dropped an article. First of all, you're part of the team now. So congratulations on that.
I've joined the team. There was one of my articles dropped on Tuesday, and then Adam, who was also one of the founders of UAP Media, he dropped an article this morning. And they're both complementary pieces. Mine was entitled "Drone Swarm, UAPs or Other Actors," and it was basically just a personal view, but it was also just looking at the kind of the polarization of the views regarding the July 2019 incident that's been throughout UFO Twitter recently and elsewhere, and it seemed that everybody had fallen into two camps, and there was very little middle ground. At least the information on Twitter that was that. So we had Tyler Rogaway's article in the Drive where he was coming down firmly on Russian or Chinese drones, and then you had people who were saying no, that they're definitely UAPs, that they're AT. But actually, it was a triangle of sorts anyway, because he also had Mick West, who was then saying that they were bokeh. I think that's how you pronounce it. So you had a triangle which were being seen, but actually it was a metaphorical triangle. There was three separate points of view, and there didn't seem to be any room for more kind of a sane opinion in terms of, well, hold on, we haven't got enough information here. Let's just hold off a second. Let's wait and see what happens, and then maybe we can actually come to some kind of decision later on. But we simply don't have enough information to make any kind of firm judgment of what the nature of the origin of these objects are. So that was the thrust of my article. But it was also going into why didn't the U.S. Navy react more strongly to the fact that these objects were hovering over the ship's fantails, over the helidecks, which has been reported? Why wasn't there some kind of like a much more stronger response in terms of, and even some people went as far as saying, why weren't they shot down? So it went into that. But then there was also a bit at the end about the Royal Navy are sending ships out to the South China Sea later in this year, and will there be a potential flashpoint? And does that mean that they are indeed Chinese drones? So there's a whole list of things going on there, and we can get into that in a minute. And then the piece that Adam dropped this morning was basically entitled "Why Now?" and it was asking the question as to why is this information coming out in the way it is? Why is it not being just sat on? Are there reasons why this information is coming to light, and what are those reasons? And he went through a few, and so we can go into that as well, with everybody.
Yeah,
So,
well,
that was
the good thing is that we've got two former military men in this discussion. I forget that Jazz also, you were a radar technician as well?
Yeah, I served in the Navy. I was a radar technician and on aircraft carriers. Back in my day, we didn't actually have any UAP encounters, but I am familiar with the technology that goes into a lot of these observations. Yes.
Yeah. By the way, this is the website UAP Media UK. This is where you guys can find the articles. If you saw me looking this way, that's because I was trying to scramble around and make sure we promote this site so you guys can read this great work. So I guess let's start, because there's a lot of interesting things about what you just said. Let's start with everybody's take. This sort of this trifecta of different opinions. Where do you think, you said that nobody was having a sane discussion, and there could be very much terra firma in the middle ground. So where do you see that terra firma? Where's the middle ground that you're discussing?
Well, my default position for most of these things is I simply don't know.
Right.
And I'm not ashamed to say that, because I simply don't have the information to make the determination. And I guess everybody sitting around this, virtually around this table here, has the same opinion. And most of the people who I come into contact with on a regular basis through UFO Twitter have the same view. But it just seems that there's outside our sort of circle of contacts and the people who write and who comment.
Yeah,
a lot of the comments go further than that, and I think there's much more extremes, and they seem to sort of generate the most comments and the most feedback. And I don't think there's not much room for the people who have a much more kind of measured and kind of reflective look at these sort of situations. I just think there needs to be a kind of more of a mouthpiece for that, and it just seems they're drowned out with all the other kind of wordplay.
Well, with that said, and I think that's a beautiful way to put it, because you're right, nobody has any clue what the hell's going on. But what are the facts? What are the 100% facts that we do know that we can add to this, and then see how we can navigate that?
So there's a certain number of ships, and it's still undetermined how many there were. And I think the last count was just over 10, but there could well be more. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong there, gentlemen. Would that be right?
Yeah, I had 11.
11, okay.
There's 11, but there was only 7 that were military, but there were some cruise ships and other things. That was what I heard.
Yeah. Okay, so the numbers are unknown, but there's quite a sizable number of ships which reported, and according to the deck logs which have been sort of received under Freedom of Information Act, there's a whole list of names of what these things were described at. So they were described as red lights, white lights. They were also described as drones. That's in the deck logs. So in terms of what they were, I don't think they're actually aware, unless, of course, the information is just different in terms of the different ships, how they were, whoever was writing the reports was describing them. But there's a whole list of objects which are simply flying over at certain heights. I think 700 feet was one that was described above the fantail of a destroyer. So that's quite close. So these things are quite in quite close proximity to these naval vessels, but beyond that, they didn't really seem to be doing anything too threatening. They weren't interfering with the ship's operations, were they? In terms of the rules of engagement, I believe they were in international waters as well. That'd be right as well. They were 100 miles off the coast or something like that.
Part of the time, there's a dispute over where every country's international waters boundaries end.
Right.
But if you're out past San Clemente, it's generally considered near San Diego. And my carrier was based in San Diego for 5 years. That's considered international waters. Yes.
Okay. So I reached out to Sean Cahill, the former Navy Chief Master of Arms of the Princeton, and just to ask him about what would the ROEs be, which one would be enforced in a scenario like this. And he pushed me in the direction of the official standing rules of engagement from June 2005. And I quoted these in the article, and it basically just says that the ROEs provide a limit on operations and ensure that US actions do not trigger undesired escalation, i.e. forcing a potential opponent into a self-defense response. So that was possibly the reason why they didn't open fire, because they're showing restraint, and they're in international waters. There's probably nothing to stop even just an airplane flying over them at a certain height. I'm not entirely sure what the kind of separation has to be before it becomes there's some kind of illegality in it. But to me, 700 feet is probably quite high for an aircraft to fly over a ship. And I'm sure during the Cold War, the Russians and the Americans were overflying their own, each other's ships at certain altitudes like that as well, taking pictures of their. You're laughing, Jazz. Is that correct, or would that be a fair summation, or would they not get that close?
Well, Graeme, first of all, I would like to join Lou in thanking you, because I think we need more people from Great Britain speaking on this subject, because Great Britain has a very rich history in all this. But in terms of naval engagements, I served during the Cold War, and we were out in the Indian Ocean. I served in the Arabian Sea during the Iran hostage crisis. And yeah, there's supposed to be rules of engagement, but we had Russian planes that came over and buzzed our carriers 500 feet over them. We had supposed fishing ships with a ton of antennas on them that were tracking our carrier at like a mile and a half behind us with no nets. So yeah, there's a lot of games that go on. And I think let's just say your hesitation to say that these are hard and fast rules is very much justified.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple days ago, and it may have been a recycled story that came out, but the Iranian state media released a video of one of their drones flying over one of our carrier groups, filming the deck of the carrier. Now, we didn't shoot it down, and it was known to be an enemy of our state. So if we don't have target identification, we sure as hell aren't going to shoot at it, because the last thing that we need is another, Flight 800 disaster. We don't want to make a mistake of shooting down a lost pilot that is an idiot and flying through a restricted airspace. We don't want to cause undue death and harm by not knowing what the target is. So by the definition of UAP, we're not going to shoot at it unless it's posing a threat. And, you know, if it's an unknown and we're seeing tracer rounds come out of it towards us, then yeah, we're probably going to take it down. But if it just happens to be there, we're not going to shoot at it.
Totally correct.
Speaking from a complete civilian schmuck's point of view, what other than shooting at a carrier or some sort of ship is, you know, you talked, Jazz, about them buzzing you guys about 700 feet. I mean, how tolerant would the U.S. military be of that before they take some kind of I mean, can a Russian jet just do that for a couple of hours over a ship and the captain's like, just keep going?
Well, it was a game, and I confess I've been out of the military for quite a while. I'm in my 60s now. I was in there during the Cold War. You know, every phase of military engagement is unique, but the at-sea phase is really unique because unlike commanders for the Army, people on ground forces, you know, they have constant communication in real time, you know, with the command. If you're giving command of a deep draft ship, particularly during either wartime or a very tense time, you are a commander alone back in those days because it took time to get communications to go back and forth. So you made decisions based in real time data and you took responsibility for those decisions. And yeah, we buzzed the Russians, back then the Soviet Union. They buzzed us. Submarines would come by. It was always just a guessing game. It's like, how close can you push it to the edge? So I think we're drifting a little far afield away from the current discussion. But in terms of the military, I completely agree with Graeme. You don't immediately turn around and fire. Even back during the Cold War, we didn't fire on the, quote, fishing vessels that were tracking us. We went and buzzed them with our F-14s, and then they backed off and went away. You know, the submarine commanders, well, they had a lot more individual prerogative, shall we say. And there is one submarine from the United States Navy, a nuclear submarine, and a Soviet submarine that are still reportedly sitting on the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, and nobody exactly knows why. But, you know, crazy things, the Brits, and I think Graeme knows this, have a saying, worse things happen at sea.
That's
and
true.
The Americans have adopted that phrase, you know, so a lot of crazy stuff happens. You know,
I appreciate you answering the question. I think that's important to know, like, because you know, that's a real big question that people are asking is, well, why don't they just shoot it down? Why don't they just take it out? I thought we're the most powerful thing in the world. And it's just like, well, listen, if you fire I don't know the millimeter of the bullets coming off of a ship, but if those they keep going if they don't hit their target. And if they keep going, say, I don't know, 5 miles and smash into a cruise ship, now you've got a really big problem. And I just don't understand why people get so worked up with like just a little bit of common sense on this one, and you'll get your answer.
There was another thing I was going to drag the conversation slightly back to the kind of the UAP question, if Jazz said there, and just to follow on from what you said there, what I was trying to get was that if you go into a situation where you're not sure what's going on, not just the restraint because of the reasons what we just said there, but if you genuinely don't know what a situation is, the last thing you want to do is go and open fire, surely. So that would apply to whether it was, like ET, if you like, for want of a better expression. Yeah. So why would you go shooting? Because you don't know what the kind of response is going to be. So the same thing applies to there, and that was part of the article. I was trying to draw parallels between the two sides, just to try and get some middle ground, which I think where we probably should be at the moment. We shouldn't be trying to take sides, and we should just wait and see. So I mean, what's your thoughts on that in terms of, would you go into a situation? Well, you wouldn't, would you? You would just hang back and think, well, we'll see what they do first.
Well, Graeme, your article also touched on the intel gathering aspect, which plays right into that. And I was on Andrew Hall's show about a week ago, and I was talking about this very exact same thing. That with the USS Kidd incident, we're looking at a swarm of, and I'm going to use the term drones because the Navy is using the term drones. And until they change their terminology, I'll maintain drones on this. But when you have a drone swarm, the reason that they're swarming is because they're small. They don't carry a lot of sensor tech. So you're either going to have a blanket technology across all the craft in that swarm so they can get 360 pictures or 360 ELINT or whatever it is, the sensor tech that they have on it, or the sensors on each individual drone in that swarm is going to be slightly different so they can gather more types of electronic signature intel. Now, we're not going to go after them. We're not going to shoot at them or try to knock them down because, like I was saying earlier, these vessels that we have out there, they have some of the most advanced sensor technology that we possess on deck. And as these drones are sniffing us, we're sniffing them. We want to find out what they're capable of knowing about us. We're going to go into a quiet mode. And Jazz, you'll know the terminology. I don't, but we're going to reduce our transmission signatures. We're going to, reduce our electronic transmissions to help prevent any leakage of information out. But at the same time, our sensors are going to be pointed at these drones, and we're going to be trying to identify what it is that they can find out about us and what their vulnerabilities are. Now, we're not going to exploit those vulnerabilities right off the bat because we don't want to have them plug the gap. Because once we do get into a conflict with them in 5 years or 5 months down the road, we want to make sure that we can exploit that vulnerability that we detected while they were snooping around us. So we're going to allow them to fly around. We're going to allow them to take pictures because we're studying them at the same time.
Yeah. In most of the cases, I would agree with Jeremy. Absolutely. Our first response depends on what is the potential physical threat.
Yes.
Initially. And you can gather a lot of data with something very small. But as anybody that follows like the war zone knows, in order to project a lot of damage, you need something a lot bigger. You need a Predator type drone that can actually launch missiles and things. If we see one of those around one of our carrier grips, we're shooting it down.
Yeah.
Because that's a threat. That's absolutely something. But if there's something that can collect data, Jeremy's totally right. We're collecting data on them while they're collecting data on us.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely the case. We ran into that back in the 70s and 80s when I was in. It's still true today. So if you see something that's small and flitting around, yeah, they're watching you. But you know what? We're watching them from our ships, from our satellites. Everybody's watching each other. They're gathering data. I think for Lou, the big question is, what happens when everybody on both sides is playing these games and suddenly you see something new and you're like, what the heck is that? It doesn't look threatening because it looks like a pyramid or something, but I don't see any weapons capability. I think both sides might be sitting back just for a moment, this is just my opinion, and going, we should just be listening right now.
Yeah.
It's a prudent course of action, isn't it? Sorry, go on.
Well, Scott Brown put a comment in there. It says, funny that we can't detect them coming or identify where they went or where they came from. Who says we can't?
Exactly.
You and I don't have that information.
Right.
We have not been given that information from the United States Navy or from any intelligence agency. But that doesn't mean that information doesn't exist. It just means that Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp and whomever else is getting this information leaked to them wasn't given that data. So because we don't know it doesn't mean that telemetry doesn't exist. And I can pretty much guarantee that it does exist.
Yeah. or they've been given the information and they're not allowed to release it yet. There's another option as well.
Sure.
In terms of this thing about reacting to them and shutting down your radars and radios and listening to what they're doing, that also again applies to ET. So I'm using this phrase. I probably shouldn't be. That's how I'm going to call them. And so if you genuinely don't know what they are, and you don't think they're Chinese or Russian, and there's something that is displaying performance and flight characteristics beyond anything that you do recognize, then of course you're going to also monitor them as well, because for the same reasons that Jeremy's just outlined, and also Jazz, that you want to know what they're capable of. You want to see whether they're an immediate threat, as Jazz said, and then if they're not, then you can react accordingly. But if they are a threat, then you have to respond as well. So defend yourself.
Yeah.
So the upshot of my article, at least the first part of it, was in terms of everything that people are saying regarding Chinese and Russian drones equally applies to the other side of the argument as well. And actually, because they apply to both sides, then the inference from that is actually we should be just sitting in the middle and waiting to see what develops.
Yeah. Well, because I think there's also another underlying issue, but before I say what that is we got a question from Andy in that UFO podcast, but I'm not even going to read it out loud. Dude, get your ass in here. Get in here and ask the question, man. You got the invite. Come hang out.
Get in here, dude.
We've already got one strange accent. We can't deal with two of them.
No, I love other accents. Don't make them feel self-conscious. Damn you, McGowan. Listen, okay, so I think the underlying issue here, and the thing that I think the Drive article really pointed out nicely, was all of those things that you guys said are, I think, spot on. But I think the underlying issue is here that there are very strange drones, and in some cases it seems like they're put together with fishing string and toilet paper. And you look at them, and there's in some cases they're very, very credible people seeing these things, and they're seeing them on military bases. They happen to be military personnel, and they don't report it because they don't want to catch the stigma or the BS on the back end of it. So instead of reporting it, they're just not going to say anything, and it's creating a monster that we're not addressing in the room. And I wanted to get your guys' take on that, because I think here's the thing, right? I think these swarms, everything that everybody's talking about over these ships, in 99.1% of those cases, it's probably Russian or Chinese tech. We're looking for the 0.9%, the diamond in the rough, the one that really, really sticks out. And it's important that I think the beautiful thing about the information that Corbell and these guys dropped is my mother shared it with me. Like the average everyday person who's not into this topic shared this with me. So it got the conversation going in a place that's outside of these four squares here. And that's what I love about the data drop. Okay. It doesn't have the real data, I think, that you and I and the people in this room are really, really looking for. But we look at it and we say, hey, this is pretty good, but we just want some more. And I think it's okay to set a high standard, a high bar when the information comes in. And if it doesn't meet that bar, sure, we can be happy about it. We can get a little excited about it, but don't put all your eggs in that basket. Like this is a marathon, not a race. We have to understand we're not going to get the video. We're not going to get the, craft or the body. Maybe in 20 years, we might get some of those things.
Well, I would say we're not going to be given the video. But if we go out and we mobilize our own army and we put this data collection machine together ourselves, we could get it.
Absolutely. And
Jeremy's right.
Yeah.
Jeremy's
and that's why we're doing the big phone home. That's why we're doing what we're doing, because in next year, this is an idea that I really would have wished I'd come up with earlier, but just talking to you guys, it came to me like Next year, we should be petitioning and requesting that instead of $22 million of pork belly spending be spent on a program that doesn't share any data, that nobody sees the light of day of, that we don't know if it's really government waste, which it probably is in most cases. And to be honest, $22 million over 5 years for the military is nothing. So you might as well take that $22 million and give it to the SCU or part of it. Give it to Duke. Give it to Harvard. Give it to these institutions of learning. Let the kids there pick. Buy them all Sky Hubs. Let them pick apart the Sky Hubs. Let them rewrite the software.
I mean, a Sky Hub.
Yes, of course. Anybody who wants to apply for a Sky Hub, get a $22 million grant and let people buy some Sky Hubs and let us collect the data for you. That way we don't need your permission, and it works both ways. It not only does this is also something that I said in the pre-show before you guys popped in. The thing that we really have to emphasize is that this is a bipartisan issue. Okay, both sides are interested in this topic. So we might as well. I mean, if they can get $22 million for a secret program, let's try and get $22 million for some Sky Hubs. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, let's see if we can open source this data, provide the government with data, and at the same time build trust between our local and state representatives and the American people. And that trust, it's a golden opportunity to build trust. This topic.
Can I take a moment and just counter it,
Josh,
about the whole thing with the Jeremy Corbell video and the George Knapp photos, and particularly the Corbell video. Is it definitely true that adversaries of the United States have been developing incredibly advanced drone technology, even in some cases balloon technology? Anybody who wants to go over the debrief, where I write my last article there, I wrote about this in length. That's absolutely true. But the specifics of the Russell encounter and the group of destroyers, that the Corbell video came from, it requires a lot of assumptions. Could somebody develop a drone that could do something like that? I think those drones already exist.
Yes.
But when the encounter takes place right off of San Clemente, and the best that the detractors can come up with is to say, well, maybe it was launched from a submarine. Because otherwise, you have to find a place between San Diego and San Clemente where the Russians or the Chinese can launch a fleet of drones that can be up in the air for 8 hours or more and get back to a refueling station or whatever and transmit their data. That's a big ask. You're really asking a lot of those drones.
Yeah.
And well, maybe it's a submarine. And I worked in aircraft carrier fleets for years. Do you really think there was a Chinese or Russian submarine that close to San Clemente and San Diego with nearly a dozen ASW, for those who don't know, it's anti-submarine warfare, ships that didn't detect that there was a nuclear submarine there?
Yeah.
My answer is, and I'm done after this, if we couldn't do that, we have a much bigger problem than worrying about an alien invasion because we're incompetent.
I agree. That's a great point, but I will push back on that point just a little bit. And I will say that in the
Don't
drive,
argue with me.
I'm going to argue with you, sir. I'm going to argue.
Can I ask a question to Jazz real quick? Jazz,
please.
From your naval experience, if we have a strike group or a carrier group or a battle group, even in a training exercise, 100 miles off of our own domestic coastline, and there is a unidentified aircraft, let's just call it an unidentified aircraft that is buzzing, harassing, or otherwise surveilling our carrier, striker, battle groups. Do we not send up a craft to intercept wiggle our wings and tell them to go away?
It's a lot more than that, Jeremy.
Well,
We have spaces, and I
Mhm.
have sailed a lot of the time in the exact area that we're talking about, because it's the exact area we've had for a long time.
Sure.
Those are restricted airspaces.
Right.
Even commercial airliners, when there's any battle group activity going on, they are given instructions to go around that area.
It's a NOTAM. It's a notice to all airmen, and
Exactly.
they flee. So my question,
you have exactly the right word. And yes, if somebody invades that, we don't shoot them down immediately.
Right. We shoo them
we
away.
check it out. And the group that I worked in, which was the electronic intelligence group, you ping them with IFF, identification friend and foe. You ping them with TACAN, tactical air navigation, to see if they have a transponder. You know, you're tracking them all the time, moment to moment. So to answer your question, no, you don't shoot them down immediately, but boy, you're aware of it from moment one.
So to expand on my question, are there, and forgive me if this is an obvious question that I should know the answer to, but in the Russell incident, in the Kidd incident, did we ever put an aircraft in the air to go shoo these things away? Not shoot, but shoo them away.
We don't know that, because all we have is a grainy night vision video and virtually nothing. I would assume that if that was a 737 flying over and somebody was just like, oh, well, I got my night vision scope, maybe I'll look at this plane. Somebody would have checked it out, and there would have been data. There would have been transponder data to say, okay, well, that's a plane. You shouldn't be here. And somebody in the background was saying, you should have gone around.
Well, my point being is, if we didn't scramble anybody, if we didn't put something in the air to go wiggle our wings at it after a failed attempt at communication or otherwise electronic warnings to it, if we didn't do any of that, is that not indicative that we knew what the hell it was and it posed no threat and we didn't care?
That's definitely a possibility. But we're talking about a group of destroyers. And so I'm going to have to back off and say my experience is limited on carriers. If you have a carrier group, we have what are called the ready fighters.
Right.
And they are always 24 hours a day. When you're at sea on a carrier, there are 2 jets that are standing by in peacetime at any time, with pilots sitting in them and a group of Airedales who are ready to unleash them and hook a trailer to them, hook them up, and launch them within moments.
And if they don't launch, it's because there's no perceived threat.
If you don't launch the ready fighters, then there isn't a perceived threat.
Right.
So I think that's a very valid point.
Sorry, do we actually know that they were launched anyway? I mean, we have the deck logs from the destroyers from Desron 23, and we have some deck logs apparently from CSG 9, but we don't. Do we actually have the records from the carrier that would be around to know whether there was a scramble? Were there any helicopters that were launched? Because all those destroyers had embarked helicopters.
Well, I think this is the question that we should be asking.
Was there a carrier in the area? Because I've only heard about destroyers.
That's why I'm asking. Was there a carrier in the area? Because some of the vessels were from CSG 9, I believe, from Carrier Strike Group 9. So that would imply that there would be a carrier somewhere, but it might not. I'm asking the question. I don't actually know that.
This is my concern, that, and my reasoning for this is, if we did not put our own bird in the sky, then my assumption, and we all know what assumptions are, but my assumption is that we, the strike group, the battle group, whatever you want to call it, we did not perceive that triangle or that drone swarm as a threat, which would be indicative of the fact that we knew where they came from, what they were doing, and potentially that it was actually us.
Good point. So real quick, before we continue, I want to bring in our surprise pop-in guest here. But before I do that, I wanted to push back on what you were saying, Graeme, as far as the submarine being that close to, the continental United States. I think the beautiful thing about that Drive article is that it laid out a really nice argument for these drones being very simple, very easy to make, and they just happen to have a ton of very expensive equipment hooked up to them that can be launched from boats, shipping containers. They could be launched from the shore. These are things that if they crash, they don't care if they lose. Like, they're just there to collect the data and go. So that's the only thing I would say to, hey, the argument of, well, because when you think of drone, you think propellers, you think gasoline, you think like a miniature, B-2 bomber. Like, those are the things that you start thinking about when you think about drone. You don't think about like literally timber pieces and balloons, and then an $80,000 listening device hooked up to this really weird looking balloon thing, and it's a spy tool. So before you guys answer that, let's bring in this very cool dude. So look at this, Andy McGowan,
Hey.
podcast. Hello, sir. Welcome.
Yeah. Listen, I've been listening to you guys chatting away, and hi to Jazz for the first time, but face to face. Nice to see you and speak to you.
Andy, you and I have to do a individual interview. We're going to do that soon, friend.
Yes, we will. Well, that sounds good. Jeremy, as always, a pleasure.
Andy, good to see you again.
Graeme, hi. And Graeme. You're right.
I gotta say, man, this is like a dream right now. All right, like this is exactly why I started this chat room, for moments like this.
More of a nightmare. Yeah.
No. This is awesome. Okay, so Andy, what do you got for us, man?
I'm going to bring the tone down, because listening to the guys, their knowledge is incredible, and like Graeme rhyming off like CS9 and stuff like that is just like, yeah. At least you lot know what you're talking about. Yeah, you guys are all good to listen to. I just wanted to know, like, and the question I was asking, like, everyone talks about the US and China and Russia as the big superpowers and all hating each other and all being really secretive and very wary of each other. But at any level, do you think they have conversations, whether it's unofficially or officially, in big groups or small groups or individuals, and they discuss these things and say, do you know what? I mean, they're not ours. We know they're not yours. We know they're not theirs. And they have those kind of chats in any capacity. Have you ever heard anything like that, or do you think those go on?
Go ahead, Jess.
Oh, no. Please, you guys go ahead. I just have to take care of one personal thing real quick. I'll be right back.
Go for it.
So Andy, to clarify, are you asking if our adversaries or other states have basically panel discussions like this where they're curious about what the hell is going on?
In any capacity, whether it's, I doubt they hook up over Zoom or StreamYard or, Skype, but, these guys get in touch with each other in any way, shape or form, or if they meet out in the field, whatever they're doing, and they say, I know what you do, you know what I do, I'm not going to discuss certain things, but when this comes up, that they know it's not theirs, they know it's not ours, and they know it's potentially something else.
I'll tell you a personal story that kind of validates that. When I was deployed over into the Middle East, and I don't think I can actually mention the country at the time, but we knew, I was on a very small team. We knew exactly when the Russian satellites would pass over our location. So we would pull everybody in, and we would make sure that everybody was going to be in a tent undercover so that the Russian satellites could not get a count of how many bodies that there were deployed at this location. So what we would do is we would go out into the middle of the desert before these satellites would pass over, and we would say things with rocks. We would spell out giant 40-foot tall letters, horizontal, in the desert, and then said, like, fuck you, Ivan, and things like that, spelled out with rocks. So when the Russian satellites came over, they picked up pictures of this. I know that they saw these things because I heard stories of those pictures being talked about at War College, at the Army War College. The Russian satellite photos of us telling the Russians to go get bent showed up in their intel briefings and things like that. So the conversations happen.
Yeah, Andy, I think if any two countries are talking to each other, it's probably Russia and China. I think there was a news article recently, it might have been in the debrief, that the Russian and Chinese are getting together to build some kind of base on the moon.
Yes.
I think about right. Yes. So they've had a historical.
Can I just say? I'm sorry. Can I just say real quick? That sounds like the most depressing moon base ever created. Like, talk about there will be a zero color palette, very gray atmosphere in that.
Can I just mention, though, Luis? It might be the most depressing, but I bet it's the most efficient.
Well, I don't know about that. Go to a Russian Russian television station.
Listen, the more this kind of stuff happens, if you've seen Space Force on Netflix, the more I look at that as not being satire, and you start to go, this looks pretty accurate, actually.
That's true. I'm sorry. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, the Russians and Chinese have had a kind of love-hate relationship since about the 1950s, and they have broken off ties with each other. To a certain extent over the years, but I think in recent years, because they're both got a common kind of adversary in terms of the United States, they are more likely to cooperate with each other. So it's entirely possible and quite feasible that they do have some kind of relationship in sharing information at some kind of level. But what that is, you tell me, because I don't know.
This moon base, according to Krewinva, is going to
the
have
crew in VA, man.
Oh, the crew in VA.
Yeah.
Hey, man. Hey, dude, look, my brain is really bad with things like this. So I'm sorry, the crew in VA. Put a space in between some things, but lots of roads and vodka on that moon base. That's hilarious. I love that comment. Speaking of vodka, Jazz, real quick, what is your favorite martini? I'm just curious.
Jazz, your mic's off.
Oh, your mic's muted, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
My favorite martini is an actual martini. There's only one martini.
Okay.
It's gin. It's vermouth. It's ice/water from melting ice and an olive. And my favorite one, I will just reach over here and just say Hendrick's gin. And I am not being paid to do a Hendrick's advertisement. But
they should be paying him.
They should be, and perhaps they will at some point.
Shaken or stirred?
I've gone back and forth over the years. Currently, I am doing stirred. So, but hey, let's back up just a little bit to get back up on topic. You know, the whole thing about when we have incursions into our space, you know, there's absolutely a possibility there's a totally mundane explanation for a lot of the things we're seeing. You know, there's no question. There's a possibility, although some of the best scientists are like, we don't know how you do that, but somebody could have figured it out, right? Yeah. You know, but at the same time, do we want to just sit there and say the default is, oh, Mick West is right, it's all cold seagulls? You know, I mean, there's some weird stuff going on. And the military records these things. And it was brought up, and it might have been Jeremy earlier who said, you know, well, they describe them as drones, or they describe them as UAVs in the reports that we saw in the incident we're talking about. It's like, the deck logs all said UAVs. Those are the orders people are given to record things. It's an unidentified aerial vehicle. That could be a drone. That could be a bird. That could be somebody's biplane. That could be a UFO. We don't know. Yeah, but if you, that doesn't define anything. That's all I was trying to say.
Yeah. Sorry, Jazz. If you're looking at things that you don't understand what they are, then you do tend to put them in frames of reference which you do understand. So you do, don't you? So that's why they're called those. And the difference between the different ships, and you can see different names, but they're all probably the same thing. But and again, they probably just don't know what they were looking at. And it's that what you were talking about before, about watching to see what they do, trying to get more intelligence on them. Yeah. So you're not going to put a definitive answer down because you just haven't got a clue. That will come later from some intelligence report somewhere, but we probably won't see that either.
Oh yeah, John Greenwald is not the only guy that files FOIA requests. You bet your butt that Iran State is filing FOIA requests as well. So we're not going to use terminology that gives away the goat.
Jazz, you were talking about like the kind of platforms and how they could how can they launch things from like so close to the continental United States? Did you see the article I had in the debrief about the Chinese drones, about the various types, and about the mothership drone? So they've got one now that can launch, well, I don't know how many. I think they said there was 9 in the actual test, but that could be potentially dozens. And they all, as Jeremy says, if they're all very small and they've got their own little capabilities, they could be doing all sorts of things from kind of I don't know, from jamming through to some kind of other kind of spoofing to launching missiles and all the rest of it.
We have Graeme, we have that as well. If you look at,
he addressed me, so I'm just going to answer. No, we can't rule that out whatsoever. I totally agreed with your article. But to say that human observers with not just the technology, but eyeballs, that we couldn't eliminate some things, that's always been my question about the data we're seeing about the events under description.
Yeah.
Because, could they do it? Certainly. I think we could do it, but if you have human observers plus all the technology to try to record any radar signatures, things like that, couldn't we get a little closer to saying this can't be this or this could be this? I remain a little skeptical. I don't rule anything out.
Yeah. No.
All right, Graeme, I really don't. But I just think there isn't enough data in what we've been given to say, well, if I was one of the people on the ship and I was holding the night vision scope and pointing it up, would I be that fascinated with a 737 going over? It's like, I think you also need the rest of the background data that we don't really have yet. So I don't think we know.
That's exactly where my article was coming from. And I totally agree, Jazz. So that's basically it. We haven't got enough information to be able to make any determination, and the people that do aren't going to give it to us anytime soon. It might come in drips and drabs, like it's come through Jeremy and George, but really, we're going to have to wait a long time, I think, for that. You're talking about, there was a comment I've just noticed there popped up about Susan Goff drinking martinis and laughing at this kind of conversation.
Yeah.
You could actually imagine the Chinese doing the same thing, because let's put the scenario out for a second. Something else, again, I alluded to in the article. If they're not responsible, and these are truly something that we don't understand, then it's in their interests to actually sow this kind of indecision and uncertainty, because the best thing you can do is actually just make a potential adversary think that you've got the technology. You don't even have to have it just to make it actually look like a threat. And I went back to the kind of Star Wars program that the Americans had in the 1980s. You never built it, but the Russians thought you were going to, and they were almost bankrupting themselves in the process to actually get some kind of counter to it. So and they thought you were definitely going to go ahead with it. So all you have to have is the hint of a threat, and you can have your opponent running around in circles trying to devise countermeasures, or even just tying up time, money, and resources to something that doesn't actually exist. So you can imagine the Chinese intelligence people just going like this, rubbing their hands together, thinking, look at those daft Americans and British, just tearing themselves apart, trying to work out what the hell these are.
Well, it could also be Northrop or Grumman or Boeing doing the exact same thing, looking for higher defense spending.
Exactly. Yes.
Wow, that's a theory that really kind of just blew my mind there, McGowan. Do private companies do that?
Oh, God. Oh, how many? Yes.
Have you heard of Bigelow? Oh my God!
I've heard of Bigelow, but I've never heard of Bigelow Aerospace testing the defense capabilities of our air systems.
Most of the information we are missing out of a lot of the questions we're examining came from the fact that Bigelow Aerospace and his various groups, unlike the current owner of Skinwalker Ranch, they had information that was unavailable to FOIA. They had a lot of information that, because of certain exclusivities in the way that the government handles FOIA requests.
Yeah.
If it's information that is proprietary and belongs to a private contractor, and Lieutenant Tim McMillan at the debrief it was one of the first guys to break this story and get a lot of admissions. It's like, you could, if you're the government, if you want to keep something secret,
give it to
if you're
private
spending taxpayer money on it, you have to talk about it. You have to record it, and it can be recorded. But if it's information gathered by a private organization like Bigelow, and the government uses it, but it still belongs to the contractor, it's immune from FOIA. That's how they hide all of it.
Yeah, and I work
saying.
for a defense contractor in drone technology. People ask me all the time why I'm on such this big drone kick. I work in drones. I'm a technical writer that writes capability statements for drone aircraft.
Can you get me a drone, by the way? Because I really would like one.
It depends on what you want. Do you want one that can drop munitions or launch munitions?
Call me. No, I want one with a gun and a camera. Yeah, that's all.
He's looking for an air shot of him shaking a new martini.
Right.
Or my flamethrower.
Yes. Oh, that can be cool.
We do exactly what Jazz was talking about. And I know for a fact because, I write these papers and we do things, not our company, not my company, but defense contractors do things to stir the pot. We absolutely do things to stir the pot.
Have they ever been publicly called out on that before?
To a point. I mean,
like, has there ever been an incident where maybe jets were scrambled after something that was made by, say, a Boeing, and they catch up to it and they see the little Boeing thing on the side? I mean, does Boeing get a phone call the next day from the military going, what the fuck are you guys doing?
Now, remember earlier in the conversation, Jazz was talking about the temporary restricted areas and the notice to airmen, the NOTAMs and things like that.
Right.
We're looking at the Aurora right now, which is, one of our secret projects. Is supposed to be a hypersonic, low sound producing aircraft, and they're using it to develop hypersonic technology that can bring back supersonic travel to the consumer industry. So that plane right now is in a TSSCI classified SAP classification status, but when it is flown, when it is tested, they have to get a flight restriction or an area to put this thing up in the air. So somebody knows about it because somebody authorizes that temporary restricted area. The problem is not everybody knows about it. So there's going to be somebody below the flight restriction or above the flight restriction or off to the side of the flight restriction that happens to see this gray streak doing 20,000 miles an hour. And they're like, the hell was that? And the next thing you know, a base commander somewhere is scrambling F-16s out of F.E. Warren because he doesn't know what's going on, because he doesn't need to know what's going on, because his planes don't have anything to do with that flight restriction. But because somebody reported it somewhere, somebody's going to go up and go, well, we couldn't catch it. We couldn't trail it. Well, of course, an F-16 is not going to catch something hypersonic. And then conspiracy theories go absolutely nuts. Now, I will say,
Andy, go for it.
Yeah,
it's Jeremy, on the stuff you've been posting to do with the drones, and there was loads of really, really cool. You would think they look like concepts, but there's stuff that you're saying is actively out there and in action. Yes. And I think Dave Partridge had shared either publicly or in one of the groups I'm in some pictures of Chinese drones that were put on display. And it's that age-old question of, if this is the stuff that we actively can confirm is out there in operation just now, how old is that technology, that if it's being used and admitted that it's being used, and how far ahead is the technology that we do have that we aren't aware of?
So the rule of thumb is 10 to 15 years. And because that is a publicly accessible rule of thumb, you can probably double it.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to go back one statement, and a lot of people are giving me grief, and I want to set the record straight. I've said it in Twitter. I am not trying to debunk things. I am not trying to prove the non-existence of UAP. What I am trying to get people to do is realize that not everything is a UAP. And at the exact same time, not everything isn't a UAP. We need to cut through some of the noise, things that are obviously not UAPs. Let's quit talking about them so we can concentrate on the stuff that matters.
That's a good point. I mean, I don't understand. Yeah. I think this topic strikes up a lot of emotion in people, and they get real worked up real quick instead of just, just breathe, take in the info and listen to what McGowan's saying. Like, listen to what he just said. He's not trying to burst your bubble or piss on your parade, but he's trying to point you to just thinking logically. We all know, everyone on this panel is, I think, convinced that there's something out there in the sky that doesn't fit any sort of rational explanation. What it is, nobody on this panel has any clue, but we know it's there. And if we're expecting the conversation to progress, you need to be able to take conflicting information that conflicts with your personal beliefs or truths, and you have to just swallow them. It's a jagged pill, but unfortunately for everyone, that's the boat we're in. We're in a boat where we have to ask or we have to wait. Yeah. So I'm going to go the asking route.
I mean, I hate to jump in. I've given as much time as I can.
Go for it, Jack.
I'm already getting the flag. I gotta go. Right, just got notification. We got 2 more good outlets that you're going to see on social media shortly that are going to be talking about the big phone home.
Awesome.
So we'll be talking about that later tonight on social media.
Yeah.
And I thank you for inviting me. But I have another commitment, and I got to do this.
Yeah, gotta go. Do your thing, Jazz. Thank you for stopping by, sir. Jazz Shaw, everyone. Check out his Twitter so that way we can find out all together what the hell is going on. Because I know Jazz is working real hard from a media perspective to just get the word out about the big phone home as much as possible. He's an absolute gem of a man. So I genuinely appreciate the dude.
Yeah. And Jazz, if you're still listening, I'll get you that menu so you can select what drone you want.
Yeah. And hey, Andy, dude, don't be shy in this podcast. You don't have to send me private messages, bro. Just if you got to go for it, brother. Go for it, man.
I don't want to go. You're making me go.
No,
that's fine. No, I'll go.
That's some media savviness right there, friend.
No, I do have to head off as well. Just it's late here. I'm not sitting outside. I've just got the light off in the studio. You know, I've not got that Spotify contract yet, so it's still the shed.
That's all right. That's all right. It's close though.
Yeah, close is relative. But no, thanks. Nice talking to Jeremy, Graeme as well. Luis, I'll see you on Saturday.
Yes, sir.
10:30 p.m. UK time.
All right. Yeah. Well, dude, thank you for being here. Thank you for stopping by. And I'll definitely see you Saturday, man. Thank you so much for hanging out.
Awesome. Bye, guys. Bye, Jeremy. Bye, Graeme.
Bye-bye.
All right, boys.
Lou, you were mentioned before about setting a high bar for things.
Yeah.
And also you've just mentioned about how people have got to get their act together. So we set a high bar for Mick West and his debunking, don't we? We say that he's got to go through certain processes. He's got to do a scientific method. He can't just come out with a statement. He's got to try and refute it as well in order to prove it. But we have to do the same with our information.
Yes,
it's imperative that we do the same, and
we need an opposite of Mick West.
Well, the problem is his job is easier than ours.
Yes, much easier.
He is able to debunk things based on crap data because we get nothing but crap data. We can't prove anything with the data that we are being given, but Graeme can rip it apart because that's what he does.
Well, not Graeme.
Need
not Graeme.
I mean, not yet. I'm sorry. It's the accent. You guys all sound the same. But no, his job is so easy. You get a blurry video with no context, no beginning, no end. We don't know where the triangle goes to. We don't know why the camera was being pointed up to begin with. We don't have the full story visually. We sure as hell don't have the full story in data. Mick West's job is cake.
Yeah, it's easy. It's easy peasy. Yeah, he's he's literally shooting fish in a barrel. It's so easy. And because, yeah, it's low hanging fruit. And yeah, it's just tough, man. It's tough because I know that the guys that are putting the stories out there are really trying to get as much data as they can. They're only putting out what they're given, and they're trying to verify it as much as possible. And I think they're doing a pretty decent job at that. We do know that this is real Navy footage. We do know that this came from certain strike groups and things like that. I mean, that's all good stuff. Yeah. But as a community, when we get that information, we got to then say, not so much necessarily to the people providing the data, but we got to say as a community as a whole, not good enough.
Well, let me
not good enough. We need more.
If you will indulge me for a minute, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I want you to imagine something with me. And I'm not saying, for anybody out there listening, I'm not saying this is what I believe. I'm saying this is what could happen because we don't have all the information. Yeah. Imagine a world where there's a couple guys out on the flight deck. They're bored off their ass. They're on the Snoopy team. They have the night vision goggles, and they're like, I really like this UFO topic. And they're playing around with the night vision goggles. They're like, hey, let's do something here. Let's fake a video. We've got the equipment. We've got the tech. So they put out a video. They leak it to a filmmaker. Mm-hmm. The filmmaker takes this video and he puts it all over social media. So now people start sending FOIA requests in. They start contacting the Pentagon. They're talking to Susan Go. Susan comes out and says, yes, it's a real video. Well, we know it's a real video. All videos are real, whether the content in them is faked or not. So then she says it was taken by Navy personnel. Well, it was. It doesn't mean that it was taken by Navy personnel on orders or in a direct official capacity or that it contains anything of importance. But then they go out and say it's being investigated by the UAPTF. Well, the UAPTF, if you look at the directive for the Fiscal Authorization Act of 2021 or whatever that thing was that the Senate Select Committee for Intelligence tasked the UAPTF to give us the 180-day report, that report requests information on processes, how the UAPTF is gathering data, what they have to look at, how they have to observe things, and how they have to report things. So now there's this beautiful video out there that a couple kids on a flight deck shot that ends up on social media, and this is part of the report that the UAPTF is putting together for intelligence gathering. So it is part of an official investigation. It doesn't mean that the UAPTF is investigating it because it's a UAP. It doesn't mean that Navy personnel shot it because they don't know what it was. It's just a huge calamity of errors that has coalesced into something that it's not. And this is entirely possible because we don't have all the data.
Yes. No, I mean, I can't argue with that, and it's tough to argue, but again, it's the beautiful thing about it is that the conversation is happening inside houses that normally don't even want anything to do with this topic. So that's what's cool about it. But I agree. I mean, we need more data. We need more data, and we don't know. So that's the terra firma, right?
We've got paparazzis. We've got people that walk around Hollywood taking pictures of celebrities to be able to sell to the Sun or whomever. How come we don't have people that are doing that in boats inside of a training area that are following these strike groups around, taking pictures? So when something like that happens, we get better video and better pictures than are being released to us from the Navy. I want to get somebody in a dinghy out there with a Nikon.
I mean, well, here's the thing, man. Unless there's a skirt to point that camera up, they're probably not going to want to have any interest in it. Like that's the paparazzi. I tell you,
if you take a photograph of a UFO, let's say that you're out in a dinghy off the coast of the Pacific coast of California, and you're following a strike group around, and you happen to be the guy that takes a photograph of a black triangle coming out of the water, that's going to be worth more than any upskirt photo that you can sell to the Sun.
No, I can't argue that. But then again, I think it's a little easier to find an upskirt shot than it is a black triangle. How many times are you going to go out in that dinghy before you see something like that? And also, I mean, don't you think the military would probably approach that dinghy and go, what the hell are you guys doing here? Get the Get out of here.
If it's international waters.
All right. Well, here's the thing. You know, a brave man to take a dinghy out that far.
Well, I was never in the. I don't know the vessel terminology.
I'm pretty sure
I'm
thinking of a dinghy. I'm thinking of something that is
not the SS Minnow.
Like it floats with air. You know, like one of those like inflatable type boats. I mean, even though some of those are still pretty badass, if somebody takes a knife to the boat, it's pretty much over.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys, I think that was a fantastic conversation. I mean, Graeme, what do you have any closing thoughts on what anybody said?
Just basically what I started with is we simply don't have enough information to make a determination yet, and the people who do aren't going to give it to us anytime soon. Now we're pushing for more information as we're doing on Saturday, and it's great to see everybody together. But I think people just have to manage their expectations that we're going to do all this effort, and we still may not get exactly what we want. We'll go some of the way towards it, but we just have to wait. And we can speculate and we can share opinions. But the last thing we should be doing is basically just nailing our colours to the mast, because actually we might find that information comes along further down the line that just says, "Well, I'm sorry, but you're wrong," and we might as well just hold off for the time being. I think it's just sensible, because otherwise we just sound like idiots, really. And actually, if we're trying to engage more people outside our little circle, increasing though it is, if you want to get people in the media and in politics to be involved, the last thing we want to come across as being some raving lunatics who defend a position at all costs, even though the information actually tells us it's something else. So I think just for that reason alone, we need to be just a little bit prudent in terms of trying to come across as being a bit rational and saying, yes, we don't know what this is, but we're willing to find out. So yeah, just hold that middle ground for the time being, and just wait to see what develops. It's not going to cost us anything. We're not going to lose anything. We're going to gain from doing it.
Yeah. No, I agree. And just so you guys know, on the screen here is the article that Graeme wrote. Right now I just put it in the link in the chat. So if you guys want to go check out UAP Media UK, check out this article, check out everything that Graeme's writing, and just start. The thing I think a goal of this channel is to start really challenging the way you think. Challenge the way you think on everything. Yeah. All the time. And when you're presented with new data, just adapt to it. And if you take a hard stance on something and it turns out to be wrong, that's okay too. Just admit it. That's all. Move on. It's all good. It's okay to be wrong about UAPs and UFOs. Like, it is okay. So I cannot stress that enough. Jeremy McGowan, you got any closing thoughts for us?
One thing. Yeah. I want everybody to search their personal data banks for me. I'm looking into something that somebody brought to me about 48 hours ago. If anybody out there happens to have information, reports, or any unpublished type of data or evidence of and this sounds wild, but a UAP that is roughly a half-mile long, totally rectangular, metallic silver, and has a tendency to hang out at around the 60,000 foot mark, please contact me and let me know.
I mean, there's 46 people out there. Damn, that's a hell of a pinpoint request, McGowan. I mean, I almost want to ask some follow-up questions of this. When are we going to be able to talk about what you're talking about here?
As soon as I know what it is.
Okay.
But there's a SkyWest pilot that I am trying to track down. I do not know when this happened, nor do I know where it happened. Yeah. But I have no reason to doubt, which is strong for me to say, I have no reason to doubt the veracity of the information that was given to me, but that there was a SkyWest pilot who is claiming to have seen a craft approximately 1/2 mile long, hovering stationary without any movement at a roughly 60,000 foot in altitude.
It almost makes me think. I wish Andy were still here, because he got a new logo for his show. And that kind of makes me think of the logo for his show right now. Wow. Okay. Well,
Yeah, so
if
if anybody has information,
any pilots out there that want to throw Jeremy a bone here on a half-mile wild craft,
that's
hit him up
my
at
Twitter.
Jeremy Unidentified One, or Unidentified One.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you guys, I can't appreciate you guys enough for hanging out with me today. I know these requests are always short notice, so don't ever feel bad if you can't join. You know, just I always want to stress that to the folks in the chat. But I appreciate you guys. I always appreciate your viewpoints and perspectives. So yeah, before we go, of course, I got to tell you guys about the Big Phone Home. I got to remind you, Saturday, April 24th, 2021, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Ring the bell right somewhere down here. Ring the bell. Okay. Like the video, you know, give us a like. It's not too tough. And subscribe to the channel. We are like 100 subscribers away from this channel getting monetized. Guys, that is a big deal for a new channel. So do me the solid, please smash that subscribe button. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers. I hit my content. You guys, 5,000 hours we just hit of content viewed on this channel. That's over 146 days worth of people watching my craziness. So you guys love the content. Now I just need you to get you to subscribe, baby. Subscribe. So thank you guys out there. Everyone that was in the chat, Brandy, of course, Michael's popped in here at the last second. Love you, dude. Can't wait to see you Friday. Walker, Andy Oates, Cooperman. Am I missing something on this one here? FGRA F72. Wait, is there something that I'm missing there like I did with this one?
Yeah, I don't get that one either.
True NBA. Okay. All right. Like, sorry. I like these handle names sometimes really throw me off. See, look at Christian Thompson. See, I can do that one. You know, like that one's easy. Scott Brown, thank you for being here. Of course, Shadows on Your Mind. John Lindy, UFO Blueprint. I'm sorry, guys, if I didn't get all your questions. I don't have a ton of time to hang out into a live stream today. I've got so much more work to do, which, by the way, right now, as soon as I hang out with these gentlemen, I'm going to go to my Twitter account and I'm going to start tweeting out to committees, subcommittees on the Senate side of things. I think I've got like 6 more to go that I really want to just tag those Senate members that are part of those committees. Do me a favor, retweet. Write your own message to them based off of what I'm writing them. Make sure that they're engaged and that they know that we're calling on Saturday. The more, the merrier. We're trying to attract Marco Rubio. We're trying to attract God. Talk about the Mick Jagger of Gets. How cool would it be if we can get Susan Go to come stop by for 5 minutes, and maybe ask her some hard, not too hard questions, but try and get some answers out of some people, and give them some suggestions. And again, we're requesting, we're not demanding. There's no anger. Check out www.thebigphonehome.com. There you can download the Senate contact list, the Congress contact list on one of the 6 committees that are directly related to the UAP topic. That way you're not wasting your time on a senator that has no idea about this stuff. It's a targeted list, so use our list, use our script. If it's too crazy, go to UAPActNow.com and use theirs because they make it even easier. Both tools in the tool belt are there for you to activate, motivate yourself, and engage yourself with local and state officials. Again, this is look in the mirror time. It's gut check time. If you want real substantive change on UAP transparency, join us Saturday, April 24th, 2021 for the Big Phone Home. We're going to be calling. We're going to be talking. We're going to be activating. We're going to have a great time. And the guest list, all the people you saw here are going to be there, plus many, 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 many more. So ring the bell, subscribe. Thank you guys so much. Before we go, BlueMarlinChronicles.com is our sponsor, purveyors of the world's finest fishing tackle, who will also be there on Saturday. And of course, DOS Tapes. They provide all of the sick jams that you hear on the show. Their SoundCloud link is in the description below. You guys, real quick, where can people find your stuff? Go, Jeremy.
On Twitter. Just find me on Twitter or go to my website, jeremydmcgowan.com.
Find me on Twitter and UAP Media. That's the website for some of my articles. I also have articles on the Debrief as well. And Shadows of Your Mind magazine, the latest issue. I've got a couple of pieces in there as well.
Yep, and the link to those articles are in the chat right now. So go check it out. All right, you guys. Until next time, thank you for joining me again. I do appreciate all of your perspectives, and yeah, we'll see you next time. Peace, guys.
See you Saturday. Unidentified. Unidentified.